Welcome to Monster Porn, weird fiction and horror podcast. The podcast that swears it does have a moral compass. But welcome to the fucking Bermuda Triangle, where it just kind of spins like a back alley joint pole dancer. Today's bonus short, The Incredible Crash Test Zombies, by me, Brett Norwood, with additional short by guest writer Byron F. McBride.
Man, it was cool of Puggles to throw us a summer barbecue.
Brings a new meaning to the pig roast, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, God. I'm suddenly a little uncomfortable that he's serving us brats. Are they pork?
Is he pork? I mean, really, he's some sort of interdimensional abomination that only resembles an adorable teacup piggy.
Anyway, while we were waiting for the guests to show up, how about some cornhole?
Again, is Puggles annoying you that much?
No, I mean the beanbag yard game.
Oh yeah, that. Did you know the ancient Egyptians invented that game? They had excellent yards and created all the classic lawn games for their perfect green, well-manicured grass. They also invented Lowe's and Home Depot to care for their lawns.
Ah, wow. It's hot out, isn't it?
Grab your sack and man up, Matt.
It's called a beanbag, Brett.
Oh, that too.
Ow. Damn it. Your toss, Vincent Van Discount Price.
Are you mocking my cape?
It is like 100 degrees out here on top of the fact that no one wears a cape anymore.
Did you know that in the Egyptian game, the sliding of the beanbag into the cornhole represents the sinking of the sun at the horizon and the renewal of the annual cycle leading to the fertility of the cornfields, hence cornhole?
How do you manage to turn a weekend barbecue into Wikipedia, Brett? Loosen up. Have a little fun. God, it's getting hot out here. Do you ever feel like the sun is just, staring right at you?
Oh, yeah. This one time, it wouldn't stop staring at me through the window, and I had to call the police to report a peeping Tom.
Oh, score.
Say, when are the guests supposed to be showing up?
They should already be showing up. That's weird. I don't know. Maybe we should ask Puggles.
The way he's working that grill, I'm afraid to interrupt.
Yeah. Why are the flames so high? And why is he chanting?
He's clearly from the ancient Phoenician school of barbecue. Their lawn parties were almost as renowned as the Egyptians.
So, what did the Phoenicians invent?
Besides hooked on phonics? Georgia Hobson gripped the severed forearm just above the wrist and waved the clipped and bleeding end at her coworker Wesley. Some blood splattered across the industrial flooring, like the first dash of Pollock's paintbrush, but she didn't seem to notice. "Wes," she said, "this is why carnival rides tell you to keep your arms inside the carriage at all times." And she laughed. The two engineers in white lab coats stood in the midst of a hangar-like building. Cones and neon-colored hazard tape delineated the parameters of the test course, at the end of which there was a wrecked Infiniti sedan, flipped over deliberately by hitting a ramp with one wheel at 65 miles per hour. Wesley checked the large, button-laden sport watch he was wearing. At the press of one of its big, plastic buttons, the digital face lit up electric blue. "Oh, shoot," he said, and pulled a small egg-shaped trinket out of his pocket on a keychain. "You're not even listening," Georgia muttered. "I thought I was funny." "I've got to feed my Tamagotchi," Wes mumbled. "Hold on, I don't want Stuart to die." "Do you think it was the airbag? Too much force, I mean?" Georgia went on, dropping the arm in a biohazard bin. "Of course we'll need to run the numbers." The door of the inverted sedan popped, and both engineers turned. A gray, leprous human form fell out of the upside-down bucket seat onto the concrete floor of the test run and began crawling, with one arm truncated, away from the wreck. He wore gray coveralls with yellow and black safety patterns around the hems. Instead of a name on his name patch, he had a number embroidered, 5612. He spat up some half-coagulated blood on the floor through the steel muzzle that held his teeth just parted. Georgia looked at Wesley. "You named your Tamagotchi Stuart?" Initially, the zombie war of 1987 had cost the world approximately 25.3 million lives. It was the worst pandemic outbreak since the Spanish flu. Now, in 1997, the surplus anthropomorphic necrobionts, left over from that plague, were saving millions of lives every year, thanks to science and to human ingenuity. While some made their way into medical research, a great many others, like 5612, now served in consumer product and safety testing. Their former humanity made them much more accurate simulacra of human biology than synthetic dummies or animals. Their present lack of humanity made it, arguably, and legally according to American courts, ethical. Picture, if you will, a revenant corpse, complexion like breakfast sausage and a smile like a skull, replacing rabbits and mice in cosmetics testing, held in restraints while a photographer takes headshots to document the trial of sparkling Midnight Whisper eyeshadow on a necrobiont who used to be Bruce the mechanic from the oil change place. They were put to use in this and in many other tasks ranging from replacing cadavers in surgical training, to testing cancer therapies, to testing boner pills, to, that for which they were most famous, crashing in cars. Following the initial PR campaign to rebrand the necrobionts in the public consciousness, on the heels of the widespread trauma and loss encountered in the zombie war, the necrobionts became the stars of a notable series of public service announcements, and afterwards, impelled by federal grant money, began to appear in licensed entertainment media and merchandise, becoming, even, unlikely pop culture icons of the early 90s. Those who had lost loved ones to the plague initially filed a class action lawsuit, but, as their loved ones were technically, legally deceased, the necrobionts, who still resembled them in form only, the Supreme Court had ruled. So it was that within a few short years of zombies eating your Uncle Joey's intestines in the street, you, young Timmy, were begging your parents to buy you the incredible crash test zombies that hung carded in the toy aisle of your local department store, and that appeared in flashy, neurotic early CGI animated advertisements on Saturday mornings during Pinky and the Brain and X-Men. The safety orange-colored cards, banded with yellow and black hazard tape designs, flew off the shelves come Christmas, allowing kids to place 3.5-inch zombies into scale toy cars, throw those cars at walls, and watch them fly apart as the spring-loaded gimmick was triggered. Just click the limbs and head back onto the torso, and you're good to go again. If your parents couldn't afford the cars and playsets, you could still put the zombie figure down on its back and whack the button in the chest with a mallet and watch the limbs and head go kablooey. Later figures in the line even had ejecting entrails and brains cast in bright neon plastic. And the researchers relished the same fun, but in real life. "Want to place a bet, Wes?" Georgia asked her coworker as they stood on the dais, behind a safety glass screen in their lab coats and holding clipboards. Wesley tapped his Yikes pencil on the metal clip of his clipboard. Before them, on the floor, there were road markings delineating a 1,000-foot test course. In the middle of the test course, there was a crosswalk. At each end, there was a city bus. In each city bus, there was a full load of zombies up to max occupancy, adults, children, and the elderly all included. On the crosswalk, there was a zombie family of mom, dad, grandma with walker, and baby in carriage, each attached by the arm, via chain, to the asphalt, and meandering listlessly like a dumb animal within that limited range, except for the baby. All of them sported a permanent, toothy grin from the steel muzzle, from which issued discolored drool. "What's the bet?" Wes asked. "You ever watch that comedian Gallagher? The one who thinks hitting melons with a sledgehammer constitutes legitimate comedy? Doesn't it? What's the bet now? First, the stakes, Georgia announced. Loser buys lunch till New Year's. Is that all? All that and a bag of chips, honey. Here's the bet. We're approximately 50 feet from what will be the point of collision, right? Yeah. So I bet we get splatter on the screen. You think it'll be that bad? Yep. I bet we get splattered way out here. What's more, if you laugh when that splatter hits us, you buy till next New Year's for being a comedy snob. Whatever. Okay, here we go. Beginning test. Note that I didn't agree. Sure you did. 30 miles per hour. Did you kill Stuart yet? No. 45 miles per hour. I didn't agree to the bet. It's too late to go back on that now, Wes. At speed. 60 miles per hour. Here we go! The sound was truly dreadful, and yet gratifyingly violent. Rainbow ribbons of blood and bodily fluid flailed through the hangar, like snakes colored tangerine and rust and twilight blue, and giblets of necrotic flesh thumped dumbly onto the pavement like soggy deflated basketballs. Through this rain, behind the screen, Georgia Hobson, still a little girl at heart, smiled ear to ear beneath oversized goggles as a violet dash of gore splattered across the glass. Priscilla Pursued by Byron F. McBride. My last patient of the day. Her eyes were pocketed and harrowed, thumbs fiddling nervously. Is there something specific you want to discuss, Priscilla? I asked, penciling in my observation. She nodded slowly. Yes, Dr. Jacobs. I haven't been sleeping well. I haven't closed my eyes in so long because when I do, it... She began to cry, great heaving sobs, the whites of her eyes, a pinkish hue from strain. I let her have a moment, waiting. 2 days ago it started. I was having coffee. I closed my eyes for a moment, just a blink really, and then crouched, slavering and bestial. It sat on my table, all fangs and claw and piercing predatory gaze. I ran, but it didn't give chase. I eyed it from behind a corner. As I blinked, it was halfway across the room. Eyes locked on mine. I fled to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I shut my eyes. I heard it pacing, claws scraping the wood flooring. Breath heavy, excited. Then I hit the door. I heard splintering. Eyes flying open. It stopped. The door was split in the middle, wood poking out at odd angles. She took a deep, slow breath, trying to steady herself. I managed to get past it, holding my eyes open the whole time, and left the apartment. I slept in a hotel that evening, but in the middle of the night, the window of the room I was in shattered inward with explosive force. I saw it as I sat up, frozen in air, claws extended. In mid-pounce, saliva fell in long ropes from its fangs. It's been chasing me ever since. I can't sleep. I can't run. It always finds me. She shut her eyes and wept, palms pressed to her eyes. I heard a bang from the reception. Valerie screamed. Then the door shattered into 100 pieces. Nothing stood there. Priscilla screamed, suddenly lifted from her chair, eyes still shut. Kill me, damn you, do it, fuck you! Claw marks appeared over her clothes, long streaks that quickly bloomed crimson. Her screams became strangled as punctures pierced her throat. Her body shuddered as the flesh was ripped, tossed to the side, and soon her body fell limp, collapsing to the floor. Then silence, a complete and perfect silence.
This hamburger is amazing. That flavor. So good. Good job, Puggles.
Oh, yeah. I love it when you two put my meat in your mouths.
Aww.
I'm so glad the guests never showed up. The only thing that could ruin this barbecue is people.
Yeah, dude, what happened to the guests? They're missing out on this glorious meat.
What do you mean? The guests are all here.
Huh?
Oh, wait. I just remembered something about the Phoenician School of Barbecue.
Turns out you do like people after all, Baldy. Best barbecue ever.
No, I'm gonna be sick. Oh, God, in the sun, it's so hot.
Blood of the gods. I think the sun is about to set the horizon on fire.
Yes, I am the harbinger of the final days of your world, humans! Raise your arms and pray to the desolating sun for your puny lives. And as for the flesh of your guests, where do you think I sourced the bean bags?
Oh, God.
Huh. I wondered why the beanbags were hairy.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Monster Porn Podcast is a production of Warped Box Media. Today's story was The Incredible Crash Test Zombies by me, Brett Norwood, with supporting short, Priscilla Pursued, by returning guest Byron F. McBride. For Byron's first appearance on the show, check out bonus episode 3. Thanks, Byron, for bringing your own dish to this abominable barbecue.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Monster Pornography Podcast, be sure to review it on the Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Another way to show your love for the porn is through the Monster Pornography Podcast store at monsterpornpodcast.com/store. Also be sure to follow the Monster Pornography Podcast on your favorite social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest.
Pinterest? We're not on Pinterest. Wait. This is my spiel. Who are you? Matt? You let the yard fairies play with recording equipment again. And they put us on Pinterest.
Raise your arms and pray to the desolation of your... Oh, God, I can't read. The text is too small.
You have it magnified to like 30 point, Matt.
I'm blind as shit. I can't see cell phone screens. It's like the blue light messes with my eyes. No, that was bad. Start over again.
Yes, I am the harbinger of the final days of your world!
I had to scroll. Humans.
Final days of your world, humans.
Oh, I love it when you put my meat in your mouth.
It's just not sounding like him lately. It's like I can't get low enough for it.
Hey, I get to get down here. And I gotta get...
What is with the mic? This little thing?
The mic forgot to take its Viagra.
Apparently.
Oh.
It's
We've got a limp, what do you call that? Plosive guard.
like, what is... Does it need to spin, like, around the thing? Here. Does it have to tighten, like to spin that way?
Oh, does it?
I don't know. It might be threaded like that. Yeah, there we go.
Oh my God, this hamburger is so good. Oh, I could just eat hamburgers all day.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you want to go play some backyard sonomy? I mean, cornhole? How do you manage to turn a weekend barbecue into Wikipedia? God. Oh, I missed a whole sentence there. Okay. Let's try that one again.
Matt was going free balling.
Free balling. No one wants to be on the giving end of a sloppy blumpkin. That was way harder to do than I thought because I ran out of breath immediately. One more try.
Welcome to Monster Porn, weird fiction and horror podcast. The podcast that believes that zombies are overrated. Werewolves are much better kissers. Today's story, Ia the Astronaut by Brett Norwood. Shit, that's me. Here at Monster Porn, we like to give back to the community, which is why we're getting involved in schools. We call it fear-based learning. Let's take a look at how fear-based learning is being implemented in the classroom. Here we have young Jimmy. What are you studying, Jimmy? That's right. Jimmy's got his geometry book open, ready to learn, and perched on top of his geometry book is a reticulate penis monster in full engorgement. Now, Jimmy, can you tell me what the definition of slope is? That's correct. Rise over run. Because he rose, and he ran. Over here we have Susie. Susie is the top of her class. She's nominated for class president right now. Here you can see firsthand how fear-based learning imprints conditioned responses right on the brain, like a hot branding iron onto the flesh of cattle. Susie hasn't said a word, except what she keeps repeating, in a weak, haunted voice, for all semester. And that word is polymorphic. She'll never fucking forget that SAT word now. If you, like us, value the growth and development of young people into scarred and tormented adults, you can support the Monster Porn fear-based learning program in your community by purchasing gear from the Monster Porn merch store at teespring.com/stores/monsterporn, or by reviewing Monster Porn on Apple Podcasts. Thank you, Monsterbators. The children are our bleak and foreboding future. With a ding, a little turquoise rectangle flashed in the bottom right of the monitor. Shane alt-tabbed out of his FTP client, which was running a script file, to MSN Messenger. The message was Craig. The message said, "Do you not have the downward spiral?" Shane messaged back, "Quit spying on my music library. It's my job as developer to spy on you." "How many other people are on here right now?" Craig asked. Shane alt-tabbed over to his application, Pandora's Box, and read the admin panel. 5. There were 5 users, including him and Craig. Well, that was not very impressive. "A few," Shane messaged back. "And you really should just change the name to Pandora, man," Craig messaged. "I told you," Shane replied. "Then I think some of the reference would be lost." Shane had given Craig the full manifesto before. Peer-to-peer file-sharing clients were the future of computing, the internet, and communication technology in general. The music industry was about to change real quick with the advent of the MP3 codec, and Shane was going to be on the cutting edge. The traditional record industry would turn over on its head, roll over Beethoven. But Pandora's Box was more than that. Music sharing was just the start. The music industry would be overtaken with the anarchical rising tide of egalitarian peer-to-peer file sharing, and traditional copyright law would become outmoded and finally fail with no central server to destroy or person to prosecute, the guilt being everywhere and nowhere all at once, distributed across the population of the world. But beyond this, peer-to-peer clients would change the dissemination of information itself. Information could be seeded all over the world, shared freely, and no one person or entity could control its flow as long as the peer-to-peer clients existed on various end-user machines around the world. It was a literal Pandora's box for the powers that be. Shane let it go without getting back on his soapbox this time, and alt-tabbed back to his FTP client. He read the logging coming back from the server in real time as the FTP client sent the commands from his script file. Error, bad login, in red serif letters. Access denied. Shane's manifesto and digital egalitarianism aside, he was aware that he was only half joking about it being his job to spy on Pandora's Box users. He was well aware that anyone who knew what he was doing with the software could gain significant data about other users. At the very least, an IP address linked to a geographic location, and file names and paths of the files being transferred. This is why Shane never used his own application for pornography, even though, on the down low, he knew that pornography would be the content that would make or break his platform, just like it had for VHS in its battle against Betamax 10 or 15 years before. He just had to let users figure that out for themselves, so he didn't have to seed the content himself and dirty his hands. Really, it was certain they would figure it out before too long. A few things are certain: death, taxes, and titty pictures. Shane spaced out and watched the red error messages float by. The messages logged the failure of a repeated FTP login request to an IP address that Shane had found by inspecting the source of the web page. It was the CDN hosting all of the image resources for nasa.gov. If he could gain file transfer access to that server. The ding of MSN Messenger called him back from reverie. Craig had messaged him. "So how's your Playboy bunner?" "ROFL," he answered, not even remotely close to rolling on the floor. "IDK, dude." He had dreamt about her. That's not the weird thing. Craig knew that something about this random girl had stung Shane in some way, but Shane had never let loose this fact, that he had dreamed of her, and it was certainly her, before he met her. Ia and her sister Ina turned up at the high school that year, after having been homeschooled for years prior. Ia was, like Shane and Craig, a sophomore, Ina a freshman. Both were conservative, stereotypically blonde Scandinavian girls who wore their hair up in buns most of the time at school. Their clothing bordered on the plain. They belonged to one of the kinds of Lutheran who don't dance. In short, Ia was one of the last girls you suspect someone like Shane to burn brain cycles obsessing over. And he probably would not have been, except for the anomaly of the dream. A few nights before the semester began, in late August, Shane dreamt he was outside at night in the winter, and there were colored lights zipping around in the sky like pebbles skipping on the face of a pond. Walking along the highway out to his parents' house in the country, he met a samurai paused along the roadside. The samurai was gazing dramatically into the distance, and when he saw Shane coming, he pointed his arm with all the nobility entailed in Bushido into the sky and warned Shane in a strong voice. "They are coming down now, and none may stop them, though the mighty may try from coming." Shane feared to ask the who and the why, and he fled up his parents' driveway, where he buried himself in a snowdrift near the house to hide from whatever may come. In some unnoticed turn of the mind, the snowdrift came to contain a small steel bunker, behind the door of which Shane now cowered, watching the door like a hunted mouse. When the door began to slide with a metallic grind, and with no egress beside it, Shane prepared to fight. Deeply, he knew what was coming, or thought he did, and he knew no physical means could resist. Still, his last resort was the desperation of the caught mouse faced with the cat. He would claw and gnash as long as he was able. Yet it was no horror, but Ia who entered. Shane would not learn her name until the day she sat down across from him in the Algebra 2 classroom. But it was her, for sure, in her plain blue sweater that reminded Shane vaguely of a Star Trek uniform, with her long blonde hair, in this case left free. She said something to comfort him, though the words were lost now to Shane's memory, and Shane's terror transformed, instantly, almost unnaturally, to affection. Craig was sitting next to Shane in the back of the Algebra 2 classroom when it happened. When Shane saw Ia walk in with her eyes down, greeting no one, and take her seat near the front of the room, Shane lost his train of thought mid-sentence while Craig examined his face with a wry smile. It wasn't just that this blonde girl with the V-neck sweater reminded Shane of the dream. The recognition wasn't questioned for a heartbeat. He knew that he knew her. For weeks, Shane passed her in the hall without saying anything. She never looked at him, but he surreptitiously examined her always. Ia had few friends, who were also bunners as they were called, the Apostolic Lutheran girls with their hair up in buns. But she and Shane had no friends in common, and little pretext to talk. Truly, though, Shane was just afraid. Yet after several weeks, Shane resolved to try to talk to her and see what happened. He caught her by her locker, as she closed it while hugging several books to the breast of her sweater, read that day. There was a cross pendant hanging against her collar. She sensed his attention and raised her blue eyes, perhaps reluctantly. "Hi," Shane said. His brain had not calculated beyond this. She smiled faintly. "How's it going today?" Shane asked her, halfway still passing her by, as if to obscure the fact that talking to her had been the intention. Her look read to him as suspicion. It looked like, "Why are you talking to me?" which was fair, but it was also the common look among the bunners when the heathens spoke to them. "I am doing well," she answered curtly, and with unusual grammatical consideration. She let the faint smile fade with no haste and turned away without returning the question. Shane proceeded several steps down the hall before glancing back, feeling embarrassed by her unwillingness to converse with him, and found that she had also looked back to examine him, yet not with any positive or friendly sentiment evident in her face, but with confusion perhaps, confusion mingled with sour concern. Shane's inexplicable foreknowledge of this random bunner remained the thorn in his side through the semester, only bothering him more and more as her indifference toward him became clearer with time. Shane tried to rationalize the meaninglessness of that foreknowledge by wondering whether he had known her before in elementary or kindergarten. But she wasn't, he found, in the yearbooks and photos. Ia's sister Ina was of a somewhat different stripe. Unlike her Lutheran peers, she mixed and flirted with the jocks, yet still while withholding herself somewhat aloof from those heathens. She was more impish and outgoing, but also detached from the worldly just the same. She would chat with them in the halls and go to the games, but as far as anyone knew, she didn't hang out with them outside of school, and she resisted the advances of a couple of the guys she had entranced. Paul had tried to take her to a dance, but she wouldn't go. Craig had told Shane once that Ina was hot, in his words, for a crazy Christian chick. From that conversation, in which Craig made some additional commentary on Shane's unexplained fascination with Ia, Craig had come up with the joke of assembling a harem of Playboy bunners. They could be the Hugh Hefners of the Apostolic Lutheran girls. That winter, Craig got into psychedelics and Timothy Leary and started talking about machine elves and doors of perception and alternative states of consciousness. He started listening to 60s music. Shane was a little intrigued, but so far had been too elitist and idealistically moralistic to let Craig drag him down the psychedelics rabbit hole. As Craig's best friend, there was a lot of pressure to trip on shrooms with him. A senior, Jeff Sikorsky, had gotten Craig into it, beginning with the mushrooms and then advancing into other things, along with some of the other gifted and talented kids. Sikorsky was lead violinist in the orchestra, and an insufferable, in Shane's estimation, NPR hippie, who would quote both the Iliad and the Tao Te Ching in casual conversation. Shane had no time for this sort, but even if Craig couldn't get Shane to hang out with his new psychopomp and guru Sikorsky, he could try to get Shane to trip with him alone. "Man, there's no point in trying to rip photos from NASA," Craig told him over IM. "The UFO occupants aren't just out there, like, what we're thinking of as aliens are actually interdimensional beings, Shane. Read John Mack. The truth isn't out there, it's in you, man. That's what being a psychonaut is all about. You want to see them, don't you?" Shane disagreed heartily. Truth is not subjective woo-woo New Age magic. Shane was interested in hard facts, photographic evidence, nuts and bolts technology. Shane replied, "I'm sure you can see all kinds of things on shrooms, aliens included. You can probably see whatever the fuck truth you want. Dude, you get two people on DMT in a room together, and they see the same beings. How do you explain that?" "It's called confabulation," Shane replied. "They share a conversation with them. Like, how would that work?" Shane didn't reply. Craig said after a few minutes, "You should try it, man. Consider it an experiment. If you find there's nothing there, then okay, there's nothing there. You'll never know unless you try it." Shane relented. He agreed to try shrooms once. Craig's parents had a cabin in the back of their lot, where Shane and Craig and their friends would hang out. Around 10, when Craig's parents had gone to bed, they undertook the experiment to contact what Craig, following Leary, referred to as machine elves, those pale, fetal-looking beings people claimed to encounter aboard UFOs. While Shane considered the whole thing quackery, he was also a little bit terrified. These beings had always terrified him, and it was part of why he had always been obsessed with the truth about UFOs. It started with Craig's face melting. Shane pointed it out. "Hey man, your face," he said, and Craig tried to fix it. But when he shoved his face back together, it kind of shoved his eyes out to the side, like Admiral Akbar. "That's funny," Shane told him. "It's a trap," and Shane laughed. But after a while, as Shane was watching the images on the turned-off TV, and Craig was staring at the ceiling, Shane had the feeling they were being watched. And he remembered the machine elves. There was a sinking feeling, and a palpable feeling of expectation, like there had been in the dream, as he hid in the bunker waiting for the door to open. Craig must have felt it too, because he sat up suddenly and looked around. He said something like, "Are the windows empty?" Shane was afraid to look at the flat black windows of the cabin. He knew that, in his state, his mind could see whatever it feared, and he feared, beyond that Craig was right, and what he saw now could be, in some sense, real. "Do you hear that tapping?" Craig hissed. Suddenly, Shane could hear tapping, as of fingers on glass. There was no way Shane was looking at the windows. Craig had his face shoved into a pillow. Shane tried covering his eyes with his hands, but it wouldn't work. It would work for a second, but then he could see through them. He'd take his hands away and put them back, and it would work for a second, and then he'd see the cabin around him, all the same once again, right through the palms of his hands. That sinking feeling persisted. It just kept sinking like there was no basement in the soul, like it went down forever. The flavor of fear was as palpable in the air as auto-exhaust, suffocating and evil. The camera did a spinning pan around Shane as he knelt in the middle of the floor holding his head out of his mind. "Fine," he screamed. "I'll do it. I'll look." Shane threw his eyes toward the largest window at the front of the cabin, and at first he saw nothing in the darkness, and he began to feel some relief. But then he could see the long gray fingers wrapping and the row of bald heads. A light came on in the yard, from above, cycling through orange and blue tones, washing the gray aliens in color and revealing the smoothness of their skin, their fitted coveralls, and their wide, empty eyes. "Sweet Jesus," Craig whined, who was now watching. "Machine elves." Before they knew much else, they were rising through the room and passing through that square window. No longer able to scream, no longer able to move. The glass felt like vibrating gelatin, and they were soon in the cold night air, together with the grays. They were towed up into the sky as the light went out. The tall one, who was spiritually, if not physiologically, female, explained in a booming contrabasso voice that Shane must get naked. He was in an entryway with smooth curved walls flooded with diffuse light. An arched door led to another room, at which she stood, about 5 feet tall and as skinny as a praying mantis, face not unlike the others, who milled around Shane, waiting, as blank and listless as machines. Something in her gaze spoke of peace and calm. Her fetal, teratoid features unsettled him deeply. But he began to feel comforted, as if this thing were his mother swaddling him in blankets of emotional validation. Her flat, floppy disk drive mouth never changed. But he read it now as a soft smile. He took off his clothes, handing each item off to the small grays as he did, who then folded the items and placed them along a low bench built into the semicircular wall. Then he was led into the inner room, where a table, of one piece with the room itself, waited empty, flooded with neutral light. The air smelled of matches and cleaning chemicals. As he got onto the table, panic began to surge again. This was way too like a doctor's office, and that realization filled him with childlike terror. He also realized that he was, impossibly, no longer high. He could no longer see through things or change them with his mind. Everything seemed solid and real, even though the things he saw were impossible. Craig walked by, slowly, listlessly, like a scolded child. He was weeping. He didn't look at Shane, as the short grays escorted him through the room. Shane couldn't move to watch where he went, but was forced to stay flat on the table. As the mother gray, held a long wiry instrument before his face, steadily inching closer, bringing it to his nose and then inserting it inside. Shane screamed as it made contact with the back of his sinus cavity beneath his eyes, and he felt a pinch. And then the pinch escalated to a forceful breaking of the roof of his sinus cavity. Nearby, Craig was also screaming. Mother's mute and impassive smile still seemed, psychically, to smile. Shane blacked out. When he was next aware, he was watching a large screen on a uniform wall, showing him the destruction of the world by various means. Because they were so lifeless, it took him a moment to realize that two small grays flanked him, as human as furniture, staring blankly into the walls at odd angles, as if they had just been switched off. There was an open, arched doorway to the curved hall. All of its manufacture was flawless, of one piece, and self-illuminated. Past this door, Craig, his face senseless like a drunk, was led past by the hand of an undressed beauty with big eyes and flowing hair. Shane turned his eyes back to the monitor and beheld a dead Earth, scrubbed clean by the bristle brush of a multivariate apocalypse of environmental destruction, volcanoes, comets, war, every horseman one could imagine. There was a donut. On the screen, right in the middle, it was blue and luminescent. It flickered slightly and bulged. It was a ripple in the actual fabric of the screen. As Shane wondered at this development, he noticed that a thin blue shaft of light had broken through the donut hole. It was strengthening. His eyes followed it toward himself and found it landing square in his heart. His short attendants burst to life, scrambling and confused, as this tear in the screen expanded and ripped all the way through the visionary apocalypse, up and down the wall and met the ceiling. Blue light began to consume the craft as Shane was pulled off his feet, and out over the unbounded and frigid northern sea, thousands of feet below. A black triangle swooped from the sea haze of the ancient maelstrom and swallowed him like a shark. He was still naked, standing in the soft, even light of a new captor. The room was rectangular now. The light did not emanate from the walls themselves, but there were discrete bulbs set, recessed into the ceiling. The walls were largely black. Through an open door, there was a railed catwalk visible, and people at a distance. Shane was increasingly aware of his nudity. He placed himself near a wall, less in view, but still able to gaze out into the ship. Two people, regular old human beings, dressed in white robes like evening gowns, entered the room, walking backwards, and threw a similar robe to him. Shane pulled it over his head. By the time his head was through the neck, they were gone. Cautiously, Shane embarked from the chamber onto the railed catwalk, and he beheld something like a vast docking bay, full of smaller UFOs. Technicians in white coveralls were working on them. They looked, save for the lack of grease and oil stains, just like mechanics from his town. Everyone seemed content to ignore him. Eventually, Shane made it down the length of the gallery and entered a set of high-arched double doors, reminiscent of a church, yet made of some metal. Inside was a dimly lit rectangular chamber, and another double door across from the first. From the shadows, a woman approached and spoke to him. "You find yourself in much trouble," she said. "Yeah?" Shane ejaculated. Clearly, it was her, emerging from the frame of shadow. The pewter cross glistened on her neck. Her straight, brown-blonde hair was down, resting on the shoulders of her blue Star Trek sweater. "We found you passing the Valley of Death, Shane." She paused as if that were a complete and self-explanatory thought. Then she said, "Come now," and she ushered him through the second set of doors. Shane found himself in what looked like an old Scandinavian Lutheran church with a high ceiling ribbed with beams, rows of identical pews, a pulpit up front beneath a stark, naked cross. A family stood in the aisle facing him. "Shane," said the man. "I'm Carl, and this is my wife Hannah, and our daughters Ia and Ina you know. These are our sons Enoch, Gunnar, Aiken, and Newt, and our youngest daughter, Mari. Welcome to our home." He said welcome, but they all looked at him with that Lutheran suspicion and discomfort, except Newt, who seemed to be fascinated by the stranger. "Praise the Lord Jesus Christ, we found you when we did," Carl said. "You were passing in the valley of the shadow of death. You and thank Ia for that, son. She saw you in tribulation." Shane looked at Ia's impassive face. She lowered her eyes. I don't understand," Shane said, and then tagged on, "sir," considering his company, which felt highly unnatural. "Why?" Shane searched for the question, but the question was too large to grasp. Why are you on a UFO?" The Lutherans exchanged glances. Carl's mouth opened like he was about to answer, but struggling with something, when his wife Hannah interrupted him. "Would you like a pasty, dear?" "Beg your pardon?" Shane asked. "I say you're hungry. Come and have a seat and be at home." As she led him into another room, she was on about how the Lord had provided him as a guest, and they had to treat him with the grace of the Lord. She spoke of hospitality, but the takeaway was that he was a burden. Ia and Ina followed behind him. Hannah sat Shane down at a long dining table and busied herself in the kitchen. Standing near the wall, Ia and Ina exchanged a few whispers and glanced repeatedly at Shane like a problem that needed to go away. "How?" Shane again struggled to put words to the vast sea of unknowing. "How did you know I was in trouble?" he asked Ia. Ina glanced at her sister and then answered for her. "The Lord showed us by signs." "I don't understand," Shane said, and he felt suddenly like crying, which he had to fight to resist. "I don't understand anything. What happened to Craig? What is this place? Why the fuck are you on a UFO? What in the world is a pasty? Excuse my French." "You are in with the demons," Ia finally said. "The fallen ones." Once Ia had broken the dike, Ina filled the silence. "The Lord made them in the start of his works, builders who rebelled against him and made things apart from his plan. So he cordoned them off in the outer dark that his angels might make things right with him. But the old builders were cunning. They built things out in the dark and seek after every chance to get back into the world of God's works. And they found they can use the free will of man as a sort of loophole, a back door." The excitement with which Ina had spilled this mythology startled Shane, and, it seemed, everyone in the room. "But thank Christ we found you when we did," Hannah repeated, not looking from her work. "But why? How?" Shane struggled. "Whose UFO is this?" While Ia and her mother exchanged worried glances, Ina burst out proudly, drawing the other women's alarmed gaze. "Ours?" "Look," Ia said, redirecting the conversation. "The demon kind use the human mind to get in, you understand. They, like God maybe, require human belief to become real to us and have power over us. And the thing you did with Craig, it sort of, lubricates belief, makes it easy. That's why it's dangerous. You understand what you did?" Where Ina's explanatory style was that of an excited child, Ia's was matter-of-fact and begrudged. She spoke with her hands as if trying to physically hand him the concepts of which he was ignorant and unprepared, in chunks that could be held. While Ia paused to gauge his comprehension, Shane glanced at Ina. At his glance, she burst forth again. "There were UFOs before the flood," she told excitedly. "What?" Shane started to say, but she was already speaking. "Like before the great flood of Noah. Our people found them in the glaciers generations ago. They've been our secret." She whispered the last part, as if to emphasize this was a secret. This is fucking crazy, Shane muttered, and then glanced at his host's back. Excuse my French. We're worried about your friend, Hannah said without looking or acknowledging his gaffe. Yeah, where is Craig? Shane wondered again. They've had him before, Ia said. What? What does that mean? Shane asked. It's not his first time, Ina said, though he might not remember it all. In other words, Hannah said, delivering his plated snack to the table, he's farther down the path than you were when we found you. Shane watched over the docking bay from the catwalk, absorbing the designs of the craft while he absorbed the unreal reality in which he found himself embedded. Lanky Scandinavian men worked on the craft in white coveralls. Ia came out and met him. Stiffly, she stood a few paces away, not joining him in leaning over the rail, and also not looking at him. She wasn't shy. She showed no sign of being flustered. She was just insulated. She didn't know how to interact with outsiders. Do you need anything? She asked. No, Shane answered. They're like hackers, he said. The Greys, or machine elves, or demons, whatever they are. They search for vulnerabilities and exploit them to gain access to the universe. Ia didn't say anything, but she took another step and put her hand on the rail. She cocked her head to show she was interested to hear more. Shane started. He thought about what he was going to say and decided to continue. I do the same thing, so maybe I understand it, kinda. I'm most familiar with DDoS and brute force attacks, but what they're doing is more like a backdoor exploit. In this case, all the security measures are aimed at protecting what's been designed to be the front door, but this oversight has allowed the existence of a backdoor that the engineer, the creator in this case, may not even be aware of. I've never heard it explained like this, Ia said honestly. But God knows. That is sure. What isn't sure is why he allows it. The thing is, once you identify the back door, you can prevent it from being exploited. We know that the back door is human consciousness. What are you saying? Craig has become an instance of the back door. If nothing else, I can... what's the word? I can sure up that particular back door. I can stop the machine elves from using him. He's still probably out there somewhere, right? Getting rods shoved up his nose and vivisected and who knows what else. What he doesn't realize is that they're not in charge of him. They rely on his mind. So really, he's in charge of them, right? So what are you saying, Shane? Can you send me back to where he is? Ia nodded and put on a sour, pensive face, but she didn't answer right away. Shane now watched her face, though she resisted his gaze. Eventually, she said, Yes. Shane nodded thoughtfully into the distance of the vast room. After a moment, he spoke again. You know, before I met you at school, I met you in a dream. Was that real? Now she looked at him. You believed in them, didn't you? I mean, for a while now? In the Greys? UFOs? Yeah. Your mind has been open to them as well. It isn't the first time for you either, Shane. Her eyes flitted over his, blue. God, Shane said. But, she was quick to add, it isn't like it is for him, because of the drugs. What is to you a faint suggestion in a dream is, to him, a whole world, nearly as real as God's creation. But, Shane said, you were there. Ia smiled faintly. It was also the first time I met you. It was the first time I saw you in serious trouble. She touched his arm on the rail. It's brave of you to want to go back for him. May God protect you, Carl said, operating the retro-futuristic levers of a control console. Are you sure about this, Carl? Anna asked him, fidgeting with her hands beside him. You're sending a lost soul back to the maw of hell. Carl paused and took a breath, staring through the viewport out onto the tortured sea, which sprayed into the steely sky, obscuring the boundaries of heaven and earth. Thank you, Shane said, for your hospitality, for rescuing me, for having me in your home. Hardly noticed, the littlest brother, Newt, had fastened himself to Shane's side on the bridge. Are you really going to fight the demon kind? He suddenly chirped in awe. I don't know if fight is the right word, Shane told him. Only the Lord has power over demon kind, Newt, Carl chastened, and then directed his words at Shane. So God with you, son. Don't forget about the Lord. Don't forget about the Lord, Newt echoed to Shane. As Carl powered up the transport beam, Shane turned back toward the rear wall of the control deck, where Ia and Ina hung back with crossed arms. Ina smiled wryly. Ia's expression was harder to read. See you in school, Shane told her. The blue light overwhelmed all else. As it did, he thought he heard Carl's voice, hushed. Yeah, he shouldn't remember a thing. The atmosphere of deeply biological terror told Shane he was in the right place, at least as much as the seamless luminescent steel architecture, always mirroring the exterior curve of the flying saucer, and also that odor of matches and cleaning agents. He was in a hall. A troop of short grays turned to face him, betraying no reaction. They began hopping at him, in gravity-defying leaps, reminding him of astronauts on the moon. Their perfect relaxation of aspect and stiff legs made the motion seem impossible, yet they did it with such supernatural ease. It looked like bad video game physics, like if a cheat code had been applied. Jesus, why are they hopping? Shane uttered, and turned to run. He certainly wasn't being done any favors by gravity. Before he got very far, he found himself unable to move. The mother appeared around the far bend of the hall, all limbs and elbows like an insect, eyes like the void.
Do not fear,
she seemed to say.
There is no pain, no harm. We are your family. In the days of the end, we shall descend to save your race from fire and flood and famine. And yet, your leaders shall persecute us, but you will not persecute us, because you know that we are family.
Release me, Shane commanded.
It is for your good,
the mother told him. You are not real, Shane said. You have no right to exist. The mother smiled in his mind. The short grays had lined up behind him. There seemed to be no boundary between her thoughts and his, or between either and the short grays who had little consciousness of their own. Thoughts were shared equally between the nodes like a peer-to-peer file-sharing client, a distributed network, except that there was a boundary. The mother chose what she shared. No one else in the system had that choice.
Are we not real? Real is as real seems,
the mother told him in her booming, directionless voice.
Does this not seem real?
Where's Craig? Shane demanded.
Brother Craig is safe and well with his family, Shane,
she said. Shane could see which thoughts the mother was uploading from his mind. It was selective. Her gaze was not omnipresent but limited. It was swift like a computer script, but singular, also like a single-thread computer script.
I see that you are searching for issues with our way of communication,
she observed. You rely on belief to be here, Shane told her, hoping this truth would shake her. It had no perceptible effect, but he had little sign these things had any sort of emotion to betray. That wall, Shane said, pointing with his eyes at the saucer's boundary. "It's there because I want it to be there, just like you." The question Ia had stated, of why God would allow the back door in the security of his creation, had bugged Shane as a developer. In this moment, a possible answer arose from the back burner, where that question had been simmering. He remembered the story of a software team who deliberately introduced what they called gremlins into their own network. They infected their live end-user system with malware, intentionally, and it seemed like an insane thing to do, but it had proven smart. It was a test. If there were gremlins hacking away at their system all the time, it forced them to always make the system stronger, to find every new way it could fail, until it was always ready for almost anything, and the ineffectual gremlins were mostly only relegated to flailing ineptly at the well-fortified fringes. Shane convinced himself there was no wall, and indeed there was no wall, only the dim sea. The mother gazed at this serenely, but inwardly, Shane saw in her mind an alarm had gone off, not emotional like a human reaction, but more like an error being thrown by a computer. He found himself able to move under his own power once again. "Take me to see Craig," he said. "I need to talk to him." "Oh, of course," she said, to his surprise, her confidence unshaken. "We are happy to take you to see your brother Craig." He followed her along the hall. The short ones followed behind. Eventually there was an open, arched door on his right. She stood aside and let him see within. "Craig," Shane said, rounding the corner. "Craig, let's go." He stopped dead as he saw within the brightly lit room, where Craig sat on the edge of a cot that was of one piece with the floor, his smile shining. The wall of the room was lined with tanks full of yellow fluid, and in them curled fetuses were gestating. Around the floor, several children played, large-eyed, with sparse, light-colored hair on their bulbous heads. Beside Craig sat his wife, a pale woman with large blue eyes and thin white hair. She reminded Shane of the mother, but more human. In Craig's arms, a passive and horrible baby lay swaddled. "Go?" Craig asked, beaming, and Shane knew there was no saving him now. This was his world, as real as real. The mother instantly uploaded Shane's terror, his new failure of confidence. Shane was paralyzed, and she levitated him down the hall. To further prove the fear-based learning concept, Monster Porn is seeking a grant from the Department of Education to test the efficacy of replacing Chromebooks in schools with Elder Mandible-Eyed Trugnagoths, the Pentagon program for the weaponization of education to subject the masses to control paradigms may also be a relevant avenue for funding. To take another example from the pilot classroom, young Diego here is currently entranced by the flamenco-like 10-armed dance of the Elder Mandible-Eyed Trugnagoth. On its native world of Astakur, the Trugnagoth would dance in order to entrance the jewel-feathered Ikagil that serves as its primary prey. What you should know here is that when the Trugnagoth opens its serene eyes, as a final act of entrancement, it will briefly pierce the veil of reality, revealing the true nature of man as merely a shadow of light. If Diego then survives the Trugnagoth's attempt to consume him, starting with his face, Diego will leave the classroom overwhelmed by the burdensome enlightenment of cosmic knowledge. Education is power. I mean, not for the student, obviously. No, but for the lizard oligarchs who will rule over a broken and abused population. Amen. Monster Porn Podcast is a production of Warped Box Media, with special funding for the enslavement of man provided by DARPA. Today's story was Ia the Astronaut. I just realized Matt has been missing this whole episode. Oh well. Good day, Monsterbators. Brett here. I realize I was already here, but still here. You know, that's just what I say at this point. But hey, you know what? Moving on. If you enjoyed this episode of Monster Porn, first, I blame the education system for your taste in podcasts. And second, please review Monster Porn on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. If you are a hardcore Monsterbator like your mom and dad, check out the store at teespring.com/stores/monsterporn. More t-shirt designs are going to be revealed this month. And follow us on social media, where you can keep up with our favorite adorable little Lovecraftian abomination, Nermal. As always, we appreciate all the reviews you've left us, and all the great support from the community of Monsterbators. The podcast has been growing, and it's your feedback, along with that growth, that tells us to keep going, and that keeps us inspired. Actually, what keeps us inspired is probably our psychological disorders. But oh well, stay weird, and Godspeed, strange cowboy. It will briefly pierce the veil of veal. Fuck. We're not talking about veal. God, I'm hungry. The music industry would be overtaken with the anarchical rising tide of egalitarian peer-to-peer file... Fuck! The Lord made them in the start of his works. Builders who rebelled against him and made things apart from his plan, so he cordoned them off in the outer dark that his angels might make things... Amen. Are you sure about this, Clyde? Who the fuck is Clyde? First, we gave you the horror of hands. Then, we gave you the terror of trees. Now prepare yourself for the dread of ducks. Just kidding. Welcome to this bonus episode of Monster Porn.
Good day, Monsterbators. Welcome to this bonus episode of Monster Porn Podcast. I just wanted to remind you of all the t-shirts with Nick Calavera's kick-ass artwork. The man is talented. You can find those on teespring.com/stores/monsterporn. The next line of business is bonus episodes. I like to give Brett more work than is fair, so we're going to offer a full-length bonus episode.
I'll give you full length.
Shut up, Puggles. Where was I? Oh yeah. For every 25 new reviews, we will launch a bonus episode so that you can double the violation of your ear holes. Now on to the show. Please let it be a noise complaint. This horror punk needs to stop.
Don't hate us when we're on Warped Tour a year from now. And Patrick, while we're stopped, your backing vocals have too much head voice.
All he has is head voice.
What is that supposed to mean? Seriously, nobody will tell me what that means.
It's nothing. Don't listen to him.
God damn it. I gotta get the door. Demon Pig. Disembodied head in a jar. Get out of here. I can't have normal people seeing this waking nightmare we all share in this house.
Head in a jar? Who's a head in a jar?
We've got to tell him sometime, Matt.
I don't want to deal with that right now. Can I help? Oh my god.
Hi there.
Brett, what do I do? It's still looking at me.
What are you talking? Oh, God. What is it?
Well, hello there, tall, white, and hairless.
Hello, stout, slightly ashen, with a disquieting pencil mustache.
Can we help you? Or can I shut the door now? Please say I can shut the door now.
Yes. I think I'm in the right place. You are the monster porn guys.
Aren't you the creep from the funeral?
Yes. I'm a big fan of monster porn. Oh, you know.
What are you doing with your face? Is that a seizure?
It's winking at us.
Oh, I think I see what's going on here. I mean, not what's going on with your face, but I don't think you understand what we do. We're not actually porn. It's a joke, like, you know, like word porn or car porn or like one of those Facebook pages.
Oh, I get you.
Oh, he's doing that again with his face. What is he doing with his face?
Oh, I get you. Not porn at all. Nudge, nudge, winky, winky. Legal reasons, right? I got you, boys.
No, seriously, we're not porn. We're a serious occult endeavor to produce dark art.
Yes, oh, your dark art has touched me in my twilight zone.
Okay, yeah, so we play up the joke sometimes, but...
Oh, yes, play up the joke. If joke is what I call my penis.
I'm going to stop you right there, Michael Moore.
Oh, I like it when you talk all authoritatively and condescendingly to me. I did like that BDSM podcast you did, yes.
That was a joke too. It was the Bad Dream, Don't Sleep Real Good podcast. The acronym.
You certainly kept me awake all night.
Let's just cut to the story.
Have you guys considered sponsorship from a bad dragon?
What is that?
Here is a sample of their products. Consider it a gift.
That's a giant monster dildo. What am I supposed to do with this?
Do you really need me to explain?
When I came back from the walk, she was gone. A good clean break. The air in the apartment had the sense in it that a busy body had just been there. It smelled like her jacket and felt like energy. Her shoes were gone from near the door. The closet was about 3/4 empty. Other things would disappear over the next 2 weeks while I was out of the house during the day. My box set of The X-Files disappeared. I'm pretty sure the Christmas stocking it came in had my name on it, but it's whatever. She left the pots and pans. After a couple years of having her stuck to my side, It was a little surprising to realize how easy it was to go a day, 2 days, a week, a month, 3 months, without seeing her at all. Even during the first weeks, while she was moving out, invisible like a poltergeist moving shit around on me. Which was fine. I was fine. Women come and women go. When things get shitty, when they start to go crazy, when I morph into an asshole, when I just want to be the hell alone for a while, etc. I just needed a good minute to get over it. The first morning I woke up alone again, I curled up on the kitchen floor and cried snot for about half a minute while my toast burned. I buttered my toast and moved on into a world where I could turn on music in the morning and not piss off the cranky lump still lazing in the bed. Good enough. I craved alone time, and now I ate it up. The only difficult adjustment, really, was sleeping alone. I don't know why. It felt like sleeping naked and uncovered, only I was both. But in a few days, the feeling passed. You know, I never really expected to be alone in my 40s, but on the other hand, I never really pictured myself a family man either. I guess it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I also never imagined I'd still be working a job that could just as well take me or leave me, and I it. The evenings at the bar, well, at 26 or even 36, that made me a player. Now it made me look like an old drunk. So I only did a few nights of that before I decided it was time for my liver to retire from the sport. If I was a teetotaler now, the next best thing I could think of was to meet women at the coffee shops. So I made that a habit. But I ended up by myself just sitting in the corner seat and minding my own business most nights. After binging all the health documentaries on Netflix through November evenings, I also cleaned up my diet and started biking. I found I needed more maintenance than I used to. I'd gotten a little comfortable. My dad bod suggested that I had 5 children and a mortgage. I had so few kids it was practically a negative number, and I was renting a slightly slummy house. I bought a snug shirt that said Kale instead of Yale on the front, and swore I'd look good in it in a month, maybe 2. No more prefab pumpkin pies from the grocery store. I wasn't a sweets guy anyway. Dessert had been her thing. One thing that never happened before is that for the first few days after the breakup, I was actually physically sick. I mean, to my stomach. I could have had a bug, I guess, but I didn't feel sick otherwise, and I had this sense that my body just wasn't holding the stress well. I didn't think much of it after I recovered. After I was alone, the prank door knocking started. The first time, it was in the afternoon, and it was straightforward. I answered the door, and no one was in sight up or down the street. I thought maybe I'd imagined it. The second time, which was in the evening a few days later, I had come to suspect it was the neighbor kids, and I listened to the bushes for kids snickering at my bafflement. I wondered, angrily, why they had decided to fuck with me all of a sudden. It happened every few days for a while, and at first I would glance out the window to make sure nobody was standing there, but I quickly came to just ignore it altogether. A few evenings I sat by the window to try to catch them, but they never knocked when I was waiting for them. Around Christmas, my back was bothering me, so I was sleeping on the floor rather than the bed for better support. I was in the living room in front of the couch, burritoed up in a comforter. The streetlights reflecting off the old snow cast a sickly pink hue on the ceiling. Some orange lights on the next block gazed steadily between the slats of the blinds, while I inhaled the dust from the carpet. The snow dampened the sounds of the night. It was crazy quiet around 2 or 3 in the morning when back pain pulled me out of a fitful sleep. The world became crystal clear as if I hadn't just been dreaming. Instantly, almost as if I had been up for an hour or 2 and was on my second coffee. I tried to make out the hands on the clock, but it was too dark. A roaring engine hustled down the street, pricking the hairs on my arm. The front window lit up white and then blinked out just as suddenly as the vehicle proceeded away down the block. Again, there was quiet and I shut my eyes. Loud and clear, a knock came on the door. My eyes flashed open. Surely I had just been drifting to sleep and imagined it. No, I had the clear sense that there was a body standing on the other side of the door. I don't know why. I listened. I lifted my head so both ears were free from the pillow. The night held its breath. Outside, I sensed someone waiting patiently. It was impossible, but it was like I could hear somebody breathing in the otherwise silent night. There cannot be someone at the door at 2 a.m, I told myself. Unless it's an emergency, and then they'd have knocked again by now. And I added, if it isn't an emergency, then fuck them, especially if it's the kids. There was another knock. I scrambled upright as quickly as my back would let me. I could literally feel the hairs on my neck rise up. God damn it, what the shit, I thought. I caught a cough in my throat, trying not to make a sound. I crawled toward the window and peeked across the edge of the blinds. My heart thumped once, loudly, because I could see the back of some kid's head perfectly still. What the shit, I muttered. I collected my wits a bit and thought, well, if the kid's just standing there, it's not a prank this time. Maybe there is an emergency. Using the table by the door, I pulled myself up off my knees. I stared at the closed door, my hand just off the handle. Did I really want to answer the door at this hour? If I opened the door for the kid, was his daddy waiting around the corner to jack me and steal my TV? A small voice said through the door, "What are you waiting for?" I leapt back. I heard the light switch click behind me and I turned. There was Kaylee wrapped in my comforter wondering, "Is everything all right?" Then I woke up on my back on the floor. It was 3:33, and I got up to have a piss. My neck felt stiff in the morning, but in a weird way, in the front, and I couldn't help but rub at it as I went through the day. On my lunch, over a sandwich at the coffee shop, I realized there was a lump and it ran my blood cold, but then I felt around some more and I realized it was my glands. Had they always been that big, or were they swollen? Was I just being a hypochondriac? I deferred the decision to see a doctor until it got worse or it didn't go away. I slept fitfully again the next night. My back was still bad, and I was on the floor, but in the bedroom. I was obsessing over my slightly swollen glands, and I felt anxious and kept starting from the first reaches of sleep with a racing heart. Cruelly, I reminded myself how much safer I would have felt with someone there with me, even just if I had someone to talk over whether I should see a doc. The next day, biking to work, I heard this thumping noise, really fast, like someone running in boots, and I was perplexed to realize it was my own heart. I put my finger on my neck and tried to time it, but I couldn't. I walked my bike for a while, monitoring my pulse. All right, I told myself. I'm still just getting in shape. A few more months of eating healthy and this won't happen. Later, after dinner, when it felt like I had bad gas right under my sternum and couldn't sleep, I told myself it was just that. It was slightly to the left, just over my stomach, I told myself. I sat up and hugged my knees and was shaking. I decided to put on the light and read until I could calm down. I just needed to make it to morning, I told myself. And then if I don't feel good, I'll get checked out. I'll keep eating right, and I'll only get better. There was a knock. It was 10 at night in January, so not horribly late, but plenty dark. I almost didn't get up, telling myself it was definitely going to be a prank knock. But I thought I should at least peek and check. As I crept toward the window, not yet turning on the lights, I was reminded strongly of the dream. When I looked out the window, there was no one, and a part of me sighed in relief. Another part moaned in frustration. But then a child stepped back from the door and into view. She was staring at the door patiently, a kid older and taller than the one had been in the dream. I coughed. Well, I'm committed to opening the door now, I thought. I flicked on the light, first inside, and then the porch light, and then I opened the door. "Can I help you?" I asked, tired and cranky and blanket draped. A girl, maybe 15-ish, not bad looking if an old geezer may say so, waited on the stoop staring at her toes. Dark curls fell from her crown. I now noticed that a younger boy waited behind her. Her brother, I guessed. I need help, she said coldly. Her body barely moved, arms straight at her sides. What is it? I wondered, a little softer. Are you okay? No, she told me. What's wrong? I asked her. I started to stoop to try to see her face better. Can I come in while you call for help? Yes, I told her. But you have to tell me what's wrong and who you are. Reluctant, I stepped aside and let her and her brother come in, which they did without raising their eyes or looking around the house. Their arms remained straight at their sides. I grabbed my phone off the charger on my desk. Now you need to tell me what's going on, I said, looking at my phone and pressing the home button over and over. It wouldn't wake up. I had just been charging the thing. I looked and saw that the charger was plugged into the wall. The girl hadn't answered. I looked at her, and now she was staring at me, with pure obsidian eyes. I clutched at my chest and stepped backward, stuttering the word "what" over and over. The kids never did answer my question, and now they stay in the corner where she had come in the door, or another corner when I'm in other rooms. When my trembling hand passed through the kids later that first night, I knew I was just sick, and if I got better, the children would go away. At some point, they merged together. The being was taller as one. After a day or two, she, or it, the aggregate, started wearing a mask over her mouth, like Asian people wear during a germ scare. I never see her move corner to corner when I go to another room, but I hear her swift footsteps like a racing heartbeat. Then I look, and she is there. If she is a she anymore, bald and about 7 feet tall and skinny. Her clothes had started out normal, but now they're like hazmat gear, or maybe like what a surgeon wears. Yeah, that. I can't tell where her black eyes are looking, but I bet they watch everything. I writhe in the night. Some nights it feels like my chest is about to burst. Like there's a balloon inflating in there, and I tell myself I'll get better. I just need to keep taking care of myself, and this will go away.
Theo took another look at the photo on the desk in front of him. No, that's not her, he said. Mr. Davis, Theo, you didn't even look at them. Just look. Really look so we can definitively say it's not her. We can't see it, Officer Clive said. He was wearing a white shirt, rolled up at the elbows. His shoulder holster was empty. Theo sighed, grabbed the picture, and then rolled his chair back. He looked around and then at the photo. At first, he looked lazily, but then he cocked his head and squinted. No, he said and threw the picture down onto the table. These aren't her. Well, it looks a lot like her, Officer Clive said. Except for maybe the eyes. I don't know why her eyes look that way. Christy has a scar on her cheek by her ear where she fell from a tree and got cut. This girl's cheek is turned towards the camera. If this were her, there would be a scar right there. He pointed to the picture, and Brendan Clive frowned and shook his head. Damn. You're right. I remember that cut. When she came over for Lily's 6th birthday, she had it bandaged up. Theo didn't respond. He just stared, gaunt-faced and ill-looking. Clive couldn't remember him ever looking so awful. When Christy had first gone missing, it was horrible. The whole community was shaken, and Theo had taken it the way any good dad should. But then, as the weeks turned to months, Theo began losing weight. and any semblance of the good-hearted man he'd been disappeared. All Clive saw was a shadow, a pale shadow of the man that Theo had been, like an exposed bone. Theo went home the way he always did, retracing the steps he thought Christy may have taken. She was 3 blocks away from the police station when she had disappeared, and it was as though God had snapped his fingers and taken her. No one saw a thing. Some rumors went around town about a drifter, and a couple of old-timers got real suspicious of a young black man who'd moved to town recently. But those old-timers were always suspicious of anyone who didn't look like they'd been pushed out of the vanilla side of God's ice cream machine. He went up the hill, went 10 squares up the sidewalk, and then stepped over the broken square where the roots had pushed up underneath the walkway. There was a small maintenance shed on the side of the tennis court. He stopped and stared. Someone took her from there. If someone had been right there behind the shed, no one would have seen them. From the shed, it wouldn't have taken much to get her to the forest's edge, and then from there, it would be no problem to get to the walking path and down to the little used access road where a car could have been parked. Other rumors had gone around town. There were people saying they'd seen weird lights or heard strange voices. A group of teenagers said that some boys from out of town had been doing rituals in the basement of an old mill, trying to summon the devil himself. Theo didn't buy any of that. Someone had taken her from right here, by this broken step on the sidewalk. The only building with a window facing this exact spot was closed around the time that she went missing. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, or sometime around then. Theo had just gone to the store to get some groceries. He, being self-employed, stayed home Tuesdays so that his wife could go to school. It had been Theo and his girls, and Christy had gone out riding her bike like she did every day. All kids in the town of Reeds did. It was a place where everyone knew everyone. Of course, there was one man who was immediately blamed, a 50-year-old cemetery groundskeeper named Ryan Keel, who was on the sex offender registry for feeling up a 13-year-old girl behind a Dairy Queen about 10 years back. He was a pathetic-looking man, but he had an alibi. He was attending his grandmother's funeral in Austin, and he had the plane tickets and all. So that left Theo with the evidence. The mailman, Sam, had seen Christy ride her bike past the Grab and Grub, the convenience store on the corner of 3rd and Delphi. Christy had waved and gone south, past the old mill towards the station. She was heading to the park on the other side, just like she had asked to do. She never made it the 5 blocks from where the mailman saw her to the police station where cameras picked up everything in a 1-block radius. It had happened right here. He was convinced. The problem was that the day she'd gone missing, one of those late spring storms hit about an hour after Theo realized something was wrong. They just started searching, and the temperature dropped from the mid-60s down to about 25 as the clouds blew in. 7 inches of snow dumped in about 6 hours, and any chance of them finding a footprint in the dirt by the tennis courts was completely washed away by the quick runoff and the rain the following day. Theo walked over to the shed and looked around. Then he turned and went back to the street and past the old mill. He paused for a moment and looked through a newly broken window. Something was drawn on the wall inside, a circle of some kind. A man bumped into him, almost from out of nowhere. "Hey man, you want something?" a voice said, and Theo turned to see Mike Klintowski staring at him, rubbing his tongue against the back side of the black stud that pierced his lower lip. Theo didn't say anything. Mike was a local metalhead and troublemaker whose greasy black hair never looked clean and who smelled of cigarettes. Theo started to walk away. "Oh, you're that dude whose little girl went missing. Some people say it happened right here, you know, like in this building." Theo mumbled something, and Mike said, "What? Speak up, man." "I said it didn't happen here." "Oh, and how do you know?" "You know, some people think it was you, man," Mike said. They took dogs through here and they didn't catch a single scent, Theo mumbled. And then Mike said something, but Theo didn't hear it. He felt the world swirling around him. There was a blackness rising in him. The accusations started shortly after it had become obvious that the police had nothing. It was just Theo's word. That, and the fact that there was only about a half an hour of his day that wasn't accounted for. He had been a suspect for all of one day as far as the police were concerned. "It wasn't you, was it? You're not some freaky murderer, are you, Dad man?" Mike said. "I'm not," Theo said in a whisper, but then focused his gaze directly on Mike's self-impressed eyes. "But if you don't fuck off, that's going to change." The dreams came again that night. It was the same one. The man with the long hair and the grin stood outside of his house. Theo was inside with the curtains drawn, lying on his bed, but could somehow see him, as though he were clairvoyant. The man stood in the darkness, grinning a smile that reflected the light from a street lamp. Otherwise, he was only a shadow. Then it started. A shape would pass back and forth in front of the window, accompanied by a strange sound. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. Theo would fight to open his eyes to slits before his lids would fall again. The sound would come back. Whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. And then he'd open his eyes and swear for a moment that there was a shadow in the room. Then it stopped and he was awake. But he had to go to his front door to make sure that the man wasn't across the street. He would walk through the hallway to the entryway and find himself standing in his dark house, but suddenly the front door would be a few stories above ground level, and at the bottom of a long series of steps, there were faceless strangers standing, and he had the distinct feeling they were grinning up at him, waiting to get in. And then, by the door, a shadow of what looked like a boy about 4 feet tall would run across the living room, and a giggle echoed through the house. Theo woke up and sat up in his bed, feeling like he was drunk and struggling to separate the dream from reality. Times like this, when he woke up alone in his house, he remembered how it felt before, when his house was full, before Caitlin had taken Missy, his younger daughter, and moved back across the country with his in-laws. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his door. He went to the door and said, Who's there?"
"We need help, sir," a young girl's voice said. "Please, will you open the door?"
Theo was silent.
"Open the door, sir, please," the voice said.
I can't. I'm just dreaming again. Now go away and let me sleep," Theo said, then went back into his room, fell on his bed, and slipped in and out of fitful sleep with dreams of gnashing teeth and claws in the dark. "Theo, I just want to be honest with you. We have exhausted every resource other than time. There are no clues to where Christy may have gone or what might have happened. Even the FBI has pulled away." "You're giving up?" Theo said. "No, we just don't have anything else to give right now. Our resources are limited, we're over our budget, and I can't even continue to put men on a search that has yielded no results. The case is still open, but we're at the mercy of luck or whoever did this." "Whoever has Christy is winning. We don't even know if anyone has her, Theo. You know how she likes to play down at the river, and she could have gone there if she had gone through the trees and into the old road. If she'd have fallen in at the wrong point, who knows what could have happened to her." "You bastard. I'm not saying she's dead, Theo. I'm saying that all we know for now is that we have nowhere else to look. It's up to the man upstairs at this point." "Well, fuck you then, Brendan," Theo said as he stood up. Officer Clive just looked at him as Theo turned to go. "Okay, there is one last thing we're looking into, but God, I don't see how it could be connected. But people have been complaining about being woke up by kids playing knock-knock." Theo turned and shrugged. Officer Clive leaned in closer and whispered, You know, what we played as kids? Nigger knocking? And you think my daughter disappeared for 5 months to play pranks on the neighborhood? Well, I told you we're tapped out. We don't have any trees to shake, man. That night, Theo sat in his living room, sipping on a Red Bull. He looked at the clock. It was 1:30. At 2, he was going to take a marijuana edible and hope that he'd be asleep by 3. The dreams always happened between 1 and 3 in the morning. At 10 minutes to 2, someone knocked on the front door. Hello? Theo said. Who's there?
Mister, we need help,
A child's voice said flatly.
Yeah, mister, can you let us in?
Another child, a girl this time, said, and Theo got up and moved toward the door. He unlocked the door, but then attached the chain to the slider and cracked the door open. Oh my God, he thought as he looked at the children. They were looking down, and he couldn't really see them, but is her, or could be, he thought. The girl on the other side of the door had long, curly blonde hair, and the tip of her nose was pushed up slightly, just like Christy. But what? It was her. It had to be her. But there was still a nagging feeling that stayed Theo's hand. The boy was a few inches taller, and he had black hair. Both kids were dressed oddly, like they were going to church, like it was the 70s. Christy had never worn a formal black dress like that before. She wore dresses in the summer and jeans with sweaters in the winter. I don't, who are you?
Mister, we just need your help. You need to let us in,
the boy said. Theo looked at the girl and saw there was no scar by her ear and no freckles. Christy had freckles, but nonetheless. Theo opened the door.
Can we come in, sir?
The boy asked.
Sir, we need to come in,
the girl said. Why would she call me sir? Theo thought. Christy would never call me sir. She'd call me daddy. I'm her dad. It went from duh to dada to dada, and then she stayed with daddy. This isn't her. This cannot be her. Hold on, Theo said, and he took his phone from his pocket. If you need help, call the police, he said.
We don't want the police, sir, the boy said. We just want in, sir. Do you not want to help us?
The little girl asked.
Yes. Do you have no interest in helping children?
The boy asked. Their voices were so flat and emotionless that Theo began to feel panic rising up in his chest. But it looks like her, a voice inside his head screamed. No, I do. I of all people do. You have no idea how badly, but, he said and thought, but what? Fear was taking him like an ocean tide. He felt absolutely paralyzed. He couldn't reach to close the door or step away. I'll just make a phone call, he said.
No, just let us come in. Why will you not let us come in?
The boy demanded.
Mister, we aren't safe out here. We need to come in,
the girl shouted.
Yes, let me in.
Let us in, the boy shouted and raised his head. There were 2 black holes where his eyes should have been. Something seemed to slither in the darkness of those holes. Please, the girl pleaded. Theo looked at her. Christy? He thought, it is you. Okay, he said. Okay, you can come in. The night froze as though someone had pressed the button on a video recording, pausing the whole world. The wind ceased, and the noise of the crickets went silent. It was all Theo could do to move his eyes. He saw something moving, just out of the reach of the streetlights. A sound, like the pulsing of energy, whomp, 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 seemed to come from inside of Theo's head. He could feel it, whatever it was, grinning at him in the darkness.
Officer Brendan Clive brought Theo some coffee and donuts one Saturday morning. Clive was off duty that day, but he hadn't seen or heard anything from Theo ever since that last meeting. There had been a phone call, someone saying they'd seen a little girl matching Christy's description in a shopping mall a few hundred miles away. It was Slim, but he thought Theo should know they were going to check it out. He knocked on the door. The car was in the driveway, but the grass hadn't been cut in weeks. Theo's wife had left months ago. So it was just Theo here now, and he worked as a web developer, so if he didn't want to see people, he didn't have to. Clive began to get a little nervous, so he knocked again, louder this time. A man Clive wouldn't have recognized had he seen him in any other place answered the door. It was Theo. His hair was long and unwashed. His eyes looked like sunken bits of charcoal and were surrounded by dark purple rings. The veins on his arms stood out and looked too red. He was covered in small lumps. My God, Theo, have you seen a doctor? No doctors, Theo said. Clive stepped into the living room as Theo went to the sink and filled a glass of water, then brought it back to the officer. There is no fucking way I'm drinking that, Officer Clive said. Theo, you're horribly sick. We need to get you to a doctor right now. No, I can't leave, Theo said. Theo, I know you've been through a lot. Hell, losing Christy rocked half this town, and they barely knew her compared to you. But you need to trust me. Christy, Theo said as though he were just remembering something. Yes, my God, Theo, your daughter, Officer Clive said as he felt a drip on his arm. Clive looked up, and on the ceiling of the large, open, 2-story front room of the house, there were 2 slimy black bags that looked, if you were feeling particularly imaginative, like large cocoons, and something inside of them began to move.
That story turned my brown mirror black.
That doesn't even make sense.
Or does it? Yes.
You need to leave now.
Hello, what's going on here?
No, Puggles, I told you to stay in the basement. Put your tentacles away.
Tentacles. Did somebody say tentacles?
Oh no.
What is at the door?
It's your cute piggy demon mascot. Oh, I think I'm in love. Big fan.
Oh God.
Can I pet it?
No. What is the creepy porn guy doing to Puggles?
Avert your eyes.
I can't avert them. They have died.
I didn't know you could fit a teacup piggy in there.
No!
Oh, yes.
Monster Porn Podcast is a production of Warped Box Media, who is very ashamed. Connect with Monster Porn Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or else. Or else things will go on like normal, and who wants normal? Good day, Monster Baiters. Brett here. Remember, review Monster Porn Podcast on Apple Podcasts. For every 25 reviews that come in, we will give you a full-length bonus episode. Also, if you've been following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, you may have seen a lovable little Lovecraftian abomination named Nermal. He's a cartoon character who first cropped up around the time of Inktober last year. Some of you have wanted to see more of the little guy. Well, keep your eye on our social media. The little entity of darkness may have his day in the sun. The asshole sun. Lastly, you may also have seen on our social media some damn fine-looking models wearing our gear. Get the Nick Calavera t-shirt at teespring.com/stores/monsterporn or through monsterpornpodcast.com. That's all for now. Until next time, Monster Baiters, stay weird. And until the Shark Angels come, Godspeed, strange cowboy. For every 25 reviews that come in, we will release a few... God damn it, Brett. Spit the words out.
Theo mumbled, and then Mike said, "What?" Theo would fight to open his eyes, but he only managed shit. A shadow of what looked like a boy about 4 feet tall would run across the living room, and a giggle and echo went together there. A giggle echoed through the house. A giggle. "We need help, sir." A young... Is that the right kind of voice?
After I was alone, the prank door knocking. Or another corner, when I am in other rooms. My trembling hand passed through the kids later than at first. Fuck. Fuck a duck. Wank. Scooby-Dooby duck, what the fuck? Why you not a dog now? Scooby-Dooby duck, what the fuck? You're just sitting on a log now.
Nurses have some seriously hard jobs. From dealing with sick elderly people to working in the ER, nurses surely see their fair share of creepy and unsettling things. These nurses sent in their allegedly true creepy stories while working their everyday jobs. This is a topic I've wanted to do for a while. If you have a story you would like to share on the show, whether it be an experience as a nurse or something else, be sure to submit your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I'd love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Now, let's get into these creepy stories with nurses that are allegedly true. One night I was working the night shift. It was my first time, so I came in late by accident. I did get scolded, but they needed help very seriously due to the fact that one of our patients had blood all over their face. We did not know exactly why. We thought maybe someone had been in their room and wasn't watching them. But it wasn't until later the janitor said that he saw her scratching her own face. So during that time, I started helping to get all the cleaning supplies and medical gear that we would need to treat her wounds. But then, she grew silent. She did not say anything for the next hour, when all of a sudden she kept saying, "Madsen, Madsen," repeatedly, while scratching her face again. I was terrified because that's my last name. I wasn't wearing my tag because I came in late, so I didn't have my proper uniform. I didn't know what to do, but she just kept saying, "Madsen, Madsen." I couldn't tell she was even looking at me because her blood was all over her face and her hair was sticking to it, so I just couldn't tell. Looking at me or not, I called the doctor to come and help me. He helped her and I stood in the hallway during that time because I was terrified. Later I thought to myself maybe she was just saying "mad son" as in her own child, but then again, I am well known, so maybe she's somehow heard my name. But either way, I couldn't recognize her. I tried to ask what happened to her the next day, but they said patient confidentiality. They would only say she had been moved elsewhere. I never figured out if she was saying my name or was talking about something else entirely. I've been a nurse now for 7 years, and I absolutely love it. Back when I was in school, besides your clinicals where you did a rotation in every unit, examples like labor, delivery, psych, etc., you had a month-long unpaid internship if you passed your exams and were stated for graduation. The internships were given out by the head instructor that went alphabetically. My last name ends in a T, so I was at the tail end. All the internships I wanted, emergency, medical surgery, etc., they had all been taken. The instructor told me, hey, we have a psych internship at a major psychiatric facility. You're a big strapping guy and I'm sure you'll fit perfect. Great. Psych. I wasn't thrilled. I had no interest in psych, but I needed the hours to graduate and I figured I'd have stories to tell my buddies over a beer. I had no idea the hospital I intern at is quite well known, so I'm not going to go into any specifics, but it was a psych ward that deals with many different psychiatric disorders. There are a few floors. They had a rehab as well as a clinic for eating disorders. The floor I was assigned to, the children's psychiatric ward, so the children 18 and below with all kinds of issues were there. Since I was not licensed yet, I didn't distribute medication or really do anything besides work as a glorified orderly. Some of the kids were awesome. They had severe autism or other issues, but they were still great kids. Then, there was Adam. He was diagnosed with RAD, as well as a bevy of psychological issues. He was 10 and had tried to kill his 6-year-old sister, punched his mom so hard he knocked her unconscious, and killed the family's cat, among other things. He was not allowed general access, not allowed to do craft hour. He was not allowed to have access to scissors and such. He was allowed an hour of free time where I and another staff member brought him to a small atrium where he'd run in circles or kick a half-deflated soccer ball. Well, one day, it was raining and the atrium is a no-go, so I was told I could let him in the small nurse's lounge. The charge nurse swore she removed any weapons he could have used. So I brought him in there, and while he sat in the corner and talked to himself, I sat in the chair and waited. I get radioed from an orderly, so I take my eyes off Adam for a millisecond, and the next thing I know, a chair is violently launched at me. It hits me square in the face and I go down. I was stunned, not knocked out, and suddenly, there's a 10-year-old, 80-pound kid on the top of me, hell-bent on killing me. Luckily, he was easily distracted, and at that exact moment, the charge nurse came into the lounge, probably to get coffee. I was able to flip him over and get him subdued. The charge nurse almost wets herself when she starts apologizing. I ended up with a broken nose and bruises. The head nurse was slapped on the wrist and I was given special treatment for the next 2 weeks. Surprisingly, besides Adam and a few others, that place made such an impact on me after I graduated, I became certified. I ended up working there for 4 years. So, I have many stories from there. Last I heard, Adam was in a long-term facility and with meds, and he is hopefully doing okay. So this happened about a year ago. Some background, I'm a student veterinary nurse, a 21-year-old female. In my placement, I am required to do on-call, so I stay above the vets in a small flat. My first night on call, and I happen to be the only person staying in that flat, and we have 4 or so inpatients, cats and dogs. When someone rings the vets at night, it transfers to our out-of-hours service, which will then transfer any emergencies to our on-vet call. So, it's about midnight and I'm just falling asleep when I hear a loud male shouting outside the window. It sounded like, "I'm going to break in," or something like that. The practice is not a rough area, but it is a little busy, so I immediately sat up knowing something was wrong. I start to hear banging on the front glass doors and I panic. Sometimes when there are emergencies, people won't ring and just drive down and hope someone will be there. I consider going down, but it sounds as if they're trying to break the windows on the doors. Then, I hear nothing for a couple of minutes and then a smash in the window below my room. The window happens to be the pharmacy. We keep drugs in there, but not dangerous drugs as they are locked away. At this point, I'm pretty terrified. I call the owner of the vets and the police. The owner says she is on her way, and as the 008 service called her to say someone rang and was threatening to break in. So, I have no idea if this guy is in the practice or what. I instantly run downstairs in my PJ to the kennels on the other side of the building as I can hear the dogs barking, and I know most of them are getting worked up with the noise. After I'm sure they are okay, I scout the rest of the practice out apart from the pharmacy room and run back upstairs. I can see out my window onto the street below and just can make out the guy's figure. He is carrying a torch and has his hood up. He runs off, and I'm not sure if he has seen me at the window or anything else. But soon, after the police and the owners arrive, I feel a little bit better. They look around and the window broken is a small window. The hole smashed isn't big enough for anyone to fit through. So the police and owners decide it's fine to leave and go back home. I'm pretty bloody shaken up at this point and am reassured he probably was just some drunk and won't come back.